The sound of a hand hitting a face doesn't echo the way you think it would. It's sharp. Quick gun in less than a second. But the silence that follows. That silence lasts forever. I'm Brian. I'm 63 years old. I have calloused hands, a bad knee from 31 years of construction work, and a heart that I apparently wore on my sleeve for far too long. I raised my son, Marcus, alone after his mother passed when he was 9. I worked doubles. I missed sleep. I missed meals. I never missed one of his school events, not one baseball game, not one parent-teacher conference. I gave that boy everything I had. And I mean that in the most literal sense possible. So when Marcus turned 40 this past October, I showed up to his birthday party with a card and a check for $5,000. I'd been saving it for months. Not because I owed it to him. But because that's who I am. That's who I've always been with him. What I did not expect, what no father in the history of fatherhood should ever have to expect, was what happened next. It was a Sunday afternoon at Marcus's house. The kind of house I helped him buy the downland for 11 years ago. Big colonial, 3-car garage, more square footage than sense. His wife Deanna was there. His 2 kids. His friends from his finance job. Men in expensive watches who laughed a little too loudly at everything. I felt out of flannel shirt and my clean work boots. But I told myself that didn't matter. My son was 40. I was proud of him. I pulled him aside after dinner, pressed the envelope into his hand, and told him I loved him. He opened it, looked at the check. And then his face changed. "Dad," he said low enough that only I could hear. "This is embarrassing. You know what Deanna's parents gave us? $50,000. For our renovation. And you show up with $5,000 like it's supposed to mean something." I opened my mouth. But nothing came out. I just stood there, holding my flannel shirt closed at the collar like it could protect me from what came next. "You've always done this," he said. "You've always made everything about how hard you worked, how much you sacrificed. But the truth has died. You gave me a mediocre life and you want a medal for it." That was when I reached out and put my hand on his arm. Just a gentle touch. Father to son. I don't know what I was trying to say with it. Maybe stop, you don't mean this. Maybe I love you anyway, maybe please. He looked down at my hand on his arm. And then he slapped me, open palm, across the face, in his own kitchen. In front of his children. The room went silent. I didn't fall. I didn't cry. I just looked at him, really looked at him, and I saw a stranger. I saw someone I had poured my entire life into, and I did not recognize one single thing about the man standing in front of me. I set the envelope down on his counter. I picked up my jacket. And I walked out the door. I didn't call a lawyer that night. I didn't call anyone. I drove home. Sat in my kitchen with a bag of frozen peas on my cheek, and stared at the wall for a long time. I thought about the 9-year-old boy who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms. I thought about the teenager I'd taught to drive in an empty parking lot on a Saturday morning. I thought about every sacrifice I'd made without complaint because I believed, truly believed, that love was something you built, not something you were just handed. I thought about something I'd almost forgotten: my mother's house. My mother, Edna Hayes, died 4 years ago at 87. She left behind a modest estate, a paid-off house in a nice part of town, some savings, and a collection of antique jewelry that had been appraised at just over $200,000. When she passed, I was named executor of her estate. And because I trusted Marcus completely, because I thought we were a team, I had added his name to several accounts to help manage things while probate dragged on. What I didn't know, what I was about to find out, was that Marcus had been quietly helping himself. I hired an estate attorney named Patricia Morse 3 days after the birthday party. Not out of revenge. I want to be honest about that. I hired her because I needed to understand the full picture of what I was dealing with before I decided anything. Patricia was the kind of woman who wore reading glasses on a chain and spoke slowly, like every word cost something. I liked her immediately. What she found over the next 10 days made my stomach drop. Over the course of 16 months, Marcus had made a series of transfers from one of my mother's accounts, an account I'd given him access to for administrative purposes. Small amounts at first, $3,000 here, $4,000 there. But they added up. $114,000 in total, moved quietly into accounts I hadn't known about. During a period when I was focused on grieving, and on the thousand small tasks that come with handling a parent's estate. He hadn't just slapped me across the face at a birthday party. He'd been taking from my mother's estate, his grandmother's estate, for over a year. Patricia filed a civil suit on my behalf. She also contacted the district attorney's office, because what Marcus had done crossed a line from civil dispute into criminal territory. Breach of fiduciary duty. The words sounded clinical and cold, but they were accurate. The next 2 weeks moved faster than I expected. Marcus called me once, 3 days after he must have received the legal papers. His voice had changed. The arrogance was gone. He sounded like the 9-year-old again, scared, small, scrambling. He told me he'd been meaning to pay it back. He told me Deanna didn't know. He told me things had been hard financially, that the renovation had gone over budget, that he'd panicked. Dad, he said. Please, don't do this. I was quiet for a long time. Marcus, I finally said. I showed up to your birthday with everything I had. And you slapped me in front of your children. Then I found out you've been stealing from your grandmother's estate for 16 months. I need you to really hear me right now. I love you. I will always love you. But I cannot protect you from the consequences of who you've chosen to be. I hung up. The hearing was 2 weeks and 1 day after his birthday party. I sat in a courtroom in a building I'd driven past 100 times without ever going inside. Patricia sat beside me. Across the aisle, Marcus sat with his attorney. Not looking at me. The judge was a woman named the Honorable Sandra Keller. She had short silver hair, and a way of looking over the top of her reading glasses that made everyone in the room feel slightly guilty for something. The case was, legally speaking, not complicated. The transfers were documented. The account access was documented. Marcus's attorney made arguments about intent and repayment and family misunderstanding. But the paper trail said what it said. Judge Keller ruled in my favor on every count. Marcus was ordered to repay the full $114,000, plus interest and legal fees. His financial accounts were frozen pending repayment. Because the DA's office had also filed charges, he was facing a separate criminal proceeding. One that would ultimately result in a plea deal, community service, 3 years of probation, and a criminal record that would cost him his securities license and, 6 weeks later, his job. In a single afternoon in that courtroom, Marcus lost his career, his financial stability, and whatever story he'd been telling himself about who he was, and how he'd gotten there. I didn't feel victorious. I want to be clear about that. I felt like a man who had just watched the most painful possible version of the truth finally be acknowledged out loud. People ask me if I regret it. If I wish I'd handled it differently. If I could have just talked to him, worked it out quietly, kept it in the family. I understand why they ask. I do. But here's what I know, at 63 years old, with my bad knee and my calloused hands. The moment you teach someone that love means absorbing their worst behavior without consequence, you don't save them. You just delay the damage they'll do. To themselves and to everyone around them. Marcus needed to meet reality. Not because I wanted to punish him, but because I'd spent 40 years trying to shield him from it. And look where we'd ended up. Him slapping me in front of his children. Him stealing from his grandmother's memory. Him believing that the people who loved him most were also the safest ones to hurt. I've since learned that Dina filed for divorce. That Marcus is renting a small apartment on the other side of town. That he's in therapy. His own attorney recommended it as part of his plea arrangement. I hope it helps him. I mean that. He sent me a letter last month. 3 handwritten pages. No excuses, no requests, just words that felt for the first time in a long time. Honest. He said he was ashamed. He said he'd spent years confusing my sacrifices for weakness. He said he didn't know yet if he deserved forgiveness. But he hoped someday to be the kind of man who did. I read it twice. Then I folded it carefully and put it in the same drawer where I keep his baby photos, his little league ribbons, and the newspaper clipping from the day he graduated college. I haven't responded yet, but I haven't thrown it away either. And for right now, for this particular chapter of the story, that's exactly where things need to stay. My name is Brian. I raised my son alone. I loved him more than he knew how to receive. And when the truth finally came out, all of it I let it. Because some things can only be rebuilt once they've been allowed to fully fall.